I leave my entire estate, valued at $4.2 million, including the antique restoration business, the family home, and all assets, to my beloved mother-in-law, Catherine Marie Whitmore. The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire that was about to consume everything. I watched my daughter-in-law, Vanessa's face, drain of all color before turning the shade of a ripe tomato. Her perfectly manicured fingers gripped the edge of the mahogany table so hard, I thought she might snap it in half. "What?" she shrieked, her voice cracking like a teenager going through puberty. "That can't be right." "Read it again." But the lawyer, Mr. Henderson, simply folded his hands and looked at her with the patience of a man who'd seen this scene play out 100 times before. My son Michael sat there frozen, his mouth hanging open like he'd forgotten how to close it. And me? I sat in the corner chair they'd reluctantly offered me, the same chair where just 2 hours earlier, Vanessa had whispered to Michael that they shouldn't have even invited me to this reading. Little did she know that this moment would change everything. My name is Catherine, and I'm 67 years old. 3 years ago, I lost my husband, Robert, after 40 beautiful years of marriage. We'd built something special together, an antique restoration business that started in our garage and grew into something that filled 3 warehouses and employed 22 people. Robert was the craftsman, the one with magic in his hands who could bring a broken Victorian armoire back to life. I was the business mind, the one who handled clients, managed finances, and turned his talent into something that could support our family for generations. We had one child, our son Michael, who we loved more than life itself. When he married Vanessa 15 years ago, I opened my arms and my heart to her. She was beautiful, ambitious, and seemed to make my son happy. I helped them buy their first house, co-signed loans when Michael's consulting business was struggling, and watched their children, my precious grandchildren, whenever they needed me. I thought I was building a legacy, creating a family bond that would last forever. I was so wrong, it breaks my heart, even now, to think about it. After Robert passed, everything started to change slowly, like water seeping through a crack in the foundation. At first, I didn't notice. Grief has a way of making you blind to the subtle shifts happening around you. Vanessa began making little comments about how I was doing too much for the grandchildren, how I needed to give them space to be a family. The Sunday dinners we'd shared for 15 years suddenly became every other Sunday, then once a month, then almost never. That's when I realized something was terribly wrong. Vanessa had begun rewriting the family story, and somehow I was being edited out of it page by page. The business that Robert and I had built together was still legally mine, but Vanessa convinced Michael that I was too old to handle the stress of running it. She suggested they help me by taking over the day-to-day operations, just temporarily, just until I felt better. In my grief and exhaustion, I agreed, thinking my family had my best interests at heart. But she made one mistake. She underestimated a woman who'd survived 67 years, raised a child, built a business from nothing, and buried the love of her life. I might have been grieving, but I wasn't stupid and I wasn't weak. I started paying attention, really paying attention to the little things that didn't add up. Why were certain clients suddenly being told I was no longer available for consultations? Why were checks being deposited into accounts I didn't recognize? Why did Vanessa always have an excuse when I wanted to review the books? The breaking point came 6 months ago. My granddaughter Emma was having her 8th birthday party, a princess-themed celebration that she'd been planning for months. I'd already bought her gift, a restored antique jewelry box that played her favorite song. I was getting dressed to leave when my phone rang. It was Michael, and his voice sounded strained. "Mom, About Emma's party today. My heart started pounding before he even finished the sentence. Vanessa thinks it might be better if you didn't come. She's worried you might get emotional, and she wants to keep things light for the kids. I stood there in my bedroom, holding that jewelry box, feeling like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed my heart until it stopped beating. My own granddaughter's birthday party, and I was being uninvited because I might get emotional. What grandmother doesn't get emotional watching her granddaughter blow out 8 candles? What I discovered next left me speechless. I drove by their house anyway, not to crash the party, but just to see my granddaughter from across the street. What I saw made my blood run cold. There was no princess party. There was no celebration at all. The house was empty, cars gone. They had lied to me and taken my grandchildren somewhere else, somewhere I couldn't find them. That's when I knew I was dealing with something much darker than grief-induced family dynamics. This was calculated, this was deliberate, and this was war. I spent the next several months quietly investigating my own family. I hired a private detective, installed security cameras in my business, and started documenting every lie, every manipulation, every theft. What I found made me sick to my stomach. Vanessa had been systematically stealing from my business for over a year. She'd created fake vendor accounts, inflated supply costs, and even sold some of our most valuable pieces to private collectors, pocketing the money. The final betrayal came 3 weeks ago. I overheard Vanessa on the phone planning a family trip to Europe. 3 weeks in Italy and France, staying in luxury hotels, all paid for with money she'd stolen from my business. When I asked Michael about it later, he looked me right in the eye and said, "We need some time as just our immediate family, Mom. This trip is really important for us to reconnect." Immediate family. As if 40 years of loving him, 22 years of loving his wife, and 15 years of spoiling his children meant nothing. But here's what they didn't know. 3 days before they left for Europe, I'd had my lawyer draw up a new will. Robert's will had left everything to me, with the understanding that our son would inherit when I passed. But this new will, this beautiful, perfect document that Mr. Henderson had just read aloud, left everything to me and specified exactly what would happen to anyone who tried to steal from me or manipulate me out of my family. The explosion in that lawyer's office was everything I'd hoped it would be, and more. Vanessa jumped out of her chair like she'd been struck by lightning. "You can't do this," she screamed, her carefully constructed mask of the devoted daughter-in-law cracking like old paint. "I've given 15 years of my life to this family. I've taken care of you. I've managed your business." Her voice was getting higher and more hysterical with each word. "This is elder abuse. You're not mentally competent to make these decisions." That's when I stood up, all 5 feet and 3 inches of me, and looked her directly in the eye. "Vanessa," I said, my voice steady as a rock, "I know about the forged invoices. I know about the fake vendor accounts. I know about the antique armoire you sold to the collector in Philadelphia for $15,000. I know about the checking account you opened in my name, and I know about the trip to Europe you're paying for with my money." The color drained from her face so fast, I thought she might faint right there on Mr. Henderson's Persian rug. Michael was looking back and forth between us like he was watching a tennis match, confusion written all over his face. "Mom, what are you talking about?" Vanessa would never, but his voice trailed off as he saw the look of pure panic in his wife's eyes. I opened my purse and pulled out a folder thick with documents. Bank statements, photographs, recorded conversations, receipts, 3 months of detective work laid out in black and white. I have evidence of embezzlement totaling over $200,000, Vanessa. I have recordings of you telling clients that I was too senile to handle their restoration jobs. I have photographs of you selling pieces from my showroom to unauthorized buyers. Vanessa's careful composure cracked completely. "You crazy old witch," she snarled, her true nature finally showing. "You think you can just waltz in here and destroy my life? My children's lives? We've put up with your neediness and your constant interference for years. Michael deserves better than having to take care of his pathetic, lonely mother for the rest of his life." The words hit like physical blows, but I'd been preparing for this moment for months. I looked at my son, this man I'd raised and loved and sacrificed everything for, and I saw him really seeing his wife for the first time. The mask had fallen away completely now, and what was underneath was ugly and cruel and greedy. Michael's voice was barely a whisper when he spoke. "Vanessa, is this true? Did you really steal from my mother?" She whirled around to face him, desperation making her movements sharp and frantic. "It wasn't stealing. It was investment. I was building something for our future, for our children's future. Your mother was just going to let that business die with her." But Michael was shaking his head, backing away from her like she was a stranger he'd never seen before. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat politely. "Mrs. Whitmore, would you like me to contact the authorities regarding these allegations?" Before I could answer, Vanessa lunged toward me, her face twisted with rage. "You won't get away with this." "I'll fight this, Will. I'll prove you're incompetent. I'll take everything from you just like you're trying to take everything from me." That's when Michael finally found his voice. "Vanessa, stop. Just stop." His words came out broken, like each one was being torn from his throat. "How could you do this? How could you steal from her? How could you lie to me?" She tried to grab his arm, but he pulled away. "Michael, you have to understand, I did this for us. For our family, she was going to leave us with nothing." The police arrived 20 minutes later. I'd called them before coming to the lawyer's office, knowing exactly how this would play out. Vanessa was arrested for embezzlement, fraud, and forgery. As they led her away in handcuffs, she screamed at me from the back of the police car, "This isn't over. You'll never see your grandchildren again. I'll make sure they hate you forever." But she was wrong about that, too. 2 weeks later, Michael came to my house with Emma and little Robert, their eyes red from crying, but their hands reaching for their grandmother. He'd filed for divorce and was fighting for full custody. The evidence I'd gathered against Vanessa had convinced the judge that she was a danger to the children's well-being. My grandchildren were coming home to me. The antique restoration business is thriving again. I've hired back the employees Vanessa had fired, reconnected with the clients she'd driven away, and restored the reputation she'd tried to destroy. At 67 years old, I'm working harder than I have in years, and I've never been happier. Sometimes I catch myself humming while I'm cataloging inventory, the same songs Robert used to whistle while he worked. Michael is slowly healing from the betrayal of his marriage. He's moved into the apartment above my shop, and we're rebuilding our relationship day by day. It's not the same as it was before Vanessa came between us, but in some ways it's stronger. We've both learned the hard way that family isn't just about blood, it's about loyalty and respect and love that doesn't come with conditions. Vanessa was sentenced to 3 years in prison and ordered to pay full restitution. She lost her house, her car, her reputation, and her children. The woman who tried to steal my legacy ended up with nothing but the orange jumpsuit she wore to her sentencing. I should feel vindicated, and I suppose I do. But mostly, I feel sad for the waste of it all, for the family that could have been if only she'd chosen love over greed. Looking back now, I realize that Robert's death wasn't just the end of our marriage. It was the beginning of my real education about who I am when I stand alone. I learned that being 67 doesn't mean being helpless. I learned that grief can make you vulnerable, but it can also make you fierce. I learned that family loyalty is earned, not inherited, and that sometimes the people who claim to love you are the ones who hurt you the most. If you're listening to the story and you recognize yourself in it, if you're being manipulated or stolen from or pushed aside by people who should protect you, please know that it's never too late to fight back. Age doesn't make you weak. Experience makes you stronger. Trust your instincts, document everything, and don't let anyone convince you that you're too old or too emotional or too confused to stand up for yourself. The greatest gift Robert ever gave me wasn't the business we built together or the beautiful life we shared. It was teaching me that I was strong enough to survive without him, smart enough to see through lies, and brave enough to fight for what's mine. I'm 67 years old, and I'm just getting started. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe, like, and comment your thoughts below. I read every single comment, and your support means the world to me. Remember, it's never too late to reclaim your power and protect what you've worked so hard to build. Until next time, this is Catherine, reminding you to never let anyone make you feel invisible in your own life.